homemade outfits covering their bodies wrist to ankle. Every few evenings you can hear chants of worship and dances around the fire. Quaint, of course, but these little eccentricities only hinted the truth. The 12 Tribes is a conservative religious sect based on recreating the teachings of the 1st century Bible. Throughout the last half century, they have spread steadily across the globe, with branches dotted around North and South America, as well as continental Europe, England, Japan, and Australia. They have also faced allegations ranging from child abuse and racism to potentially causing the most destructive wildfire in Colorado history. Their tale begins in 1972 with a carnival worker named Glenn Spriggs' fourth wife, Marsha, and the Tennessee backwater of Chattanooga. Chattanooga was Spriggs' hometown, where he had been born into a religious family in 1937. For the first 30 years of his life, he lived a fairly conventional, if unsettled, lifestyle. He played football for his high school and went to college before spending much of the 60s ricocheting between jobs and wives. Amidst the dissolution of his third marriage in 1970, he dropped out of mainstream society. Like so many others before and after him, he drifted to California. The Golden State was in the grip of the Jesus movement that was beginning to spread across America. This subculture grew as an offshoot from the mainstream hippie movement, combining communal living and folk music with the feverish Christian enthusiasm. For a time, Spriggs threw himself into the movement and spent his time volunteering in rescue missions amongst alienated young people. But his search for even more devout commitment led him to the Rocky Mountains, where he met Marsha Ann DeVal. Marsha was at first everything Jean was not, a California native. She grew up atheistic in a liberal enclave before being uprooted by the counter-cultural wave that swept through the West Coast and left her living in a small town existence some way above the high water mark. Here she met and married Jean, who converted her to his particular brand of religion. But 1972, the pair were gone. The Spriggs had work to do. Warner Park, Chattanooga, 1975. A circle of young people are sitting beneath the walnut trees, strumming guitars in the evening glow. The boys are neatly dressed, mustachioed. The girls wear long trousers and skirts. Despite the heat, there's something vaguely bohemian about them, but the impression you get is somehow still clean cut. In the centre, there's an older couple, man and woman in their 30s. The two are handsome in an easy, everyday kind of way. The woman flashes bright smiles at the youths from beneath a cascade of golden hair. Her partner is tall and broad-shouldered, dark-haired and confident. When he talks, people listen. This group is the Fine Christian Community Church, soon to become the 12 Tribes. Jean and Marsha had been building their little church since 1972, preaching to local countercultural youths. They gathered the most loyal members to move into their house. In Actually, it's been a long day. Followers to be saved at the second coming. The group represents an innocuous front of wholesome, folksy living that accommodates a stream of backpackers and WWOOFERs, vehemently denying any outside criticism as media bias and misunderstanding of their righteous ways. 1985 is often painted as a turning point for the sect driven out of Chattanooga by the wave of anti-cult hysteria following the Johnstone massacre. The tribes had begun concentrating themselves in New England and spreading into Europe when they received what became known as the Stone Kingdom revelation, which led them to detach completely from mainstream society before Messiah would be able to return to the earth to establish his kingdom. There would have to be a people separate from the nations of the world who would live their lives obeying his commands. The tribes believed that they were that people. From then on, they began to tighten a noose around their disciples, cutting them off from the world and restricting them in more and more extreme ways through a culture of authoritarian leadership and fear. In order to join a tribe, prospective members sell all their possessions and donate all their earnings to the tribe, where they work long unpaid hours in the numerous yellow delis and farms owned by the group in order to stay in their communes. Once outside, they cannot own any electronic devices to read unapproved material. Soon the reality of the outside world is replaced with one of the Sprigs devising. This doctrine is, without exaggeration, harrowing. To read it is to be plunged into a world of scarcely believable 19th century morality. The tribes have created a monster, a system that oppresses women and minorities, abuses children, and causes needless death and suffering through rejection and modern medicine. Contraception and any form of birth control is outlawed, and women are pressured to have as many children as possible. Childbirth is strictly done without drugs or medical assistance to atone for Eve's original sin, which has led to high numbers of stillbirths, which are buried and undocumented in unmarked graves. Lamenting the decline of the nuclear family, women are pushed into patriarchal child-raising roles. At weddings, the bride kisses the groom as a sign of submission. Prior to this, the most intimate contact allowed is hand-holding, and even this is saved for after engagement. Anyone caught kissing or holding hands is forced into marriage, which is strictly limited to people within the group. Homosexuality is branded abhorrent, and private teachings urge capital punishment in response. A result of the widespread sexual repression and denial of education led to an epidemic of bestiality within the boys and men in the cult. Spriggs dealt with this in 2006 by forcing perpetrators to personally slaughter the animals. Brutal punishments are not just restricted to serious crimes. Children in the cult are subjected to horrific levels of physical abuse for even minor indiscretions, ages as young as 6 months old. Beatings are openly encouraged by the group's child training manual, which claims the pain of a beating is more humbling than harmful. The only way to stop the sting of the rod is to submit. Former members raised in the church describe beatings up to 20 to 30 times a day for minor perceived indiscretions, such as asking spoon-fed a tailor-made curriculum that rejects scientific knowledge and enforces the cult's view of the world. They will never go to college. Instead, the focus is put onto work from a young age, neglecting education to make a profit. There have been rampant allegations of child labour exploitation, involving victims as young as 7 being put to work in the cult's businesses, which include factories and bakeries as well as the famous yellow delis. More distressing still is a culture of child sexual abuse harboured within tribes which generally refuse to report incidents to law enforcement and attempt to deal with them internally. While some members may be expelled, high stature members will frequently be forgiven. More frequently still, reports are ignored, with the children being dismissed as liars or victim blamed and even punished. The court has also drawn particular heed for teachings on race, criticisms of which they deflect by pointing to an early history of welcoming black members. However, whilst the group may admit different ethnicities, it refuses to condone and allow interracial marriages. Worse still, teachings maintain that the transatlantic slave trade can be biblically justified and indeed was a marvellous opportunity for black people. Other warped ideologies espoused by the tribes maintain the anti-Semitic conspiracy of Jewish decide that the entire Jewish community was collectively responsible for the death of Jesus. The 12 tribes have long weathered scrutiny from the outside world, largely related to their treatment of children. In 2013, a police raid in Germany rescued 40 victims of child abuse, and 2020 searches of property in Australia yielded the body of at least one undocumented stillborn infant, but since 2008 they have been crumbling from the inside, hemorrhaging members across the globe. After one revelation shook the tribes to their core, Marsha Spriggs had an affair. This wasn't the first of mind. She'd conducted a series throughout the cult's lifespan, all successfully hushed up and forgiven without ever spreading beyond the participants. But Marsha, who some believe to have long been the de facto leader, had banished families for much less. Yet Jean, now known as Yonick, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, so I'll put it on the screen, had forgiven her without any accountability. This hypocrisy sat poorly with many members of the community, some of whom left for good. In response, the leadership began to exert more and more control over the remaining members, developing a strange authoritarian rule over even mundane parts of members' lives, such as how much toilet paper to use, 3 or 4 squares, or what shape of glasses are permitted round. Other developments have included forcing women to part hair in the middle, and men to roll up their trouser legs, and forbidding chocolate, Irish folk music, and driving on Saturdays. Amidst this decline in 2021, Yonick passed away and defections continued. Those that remain face an increasingly austere existence, but 50 years is a long time for a cult. Maybe this is the beginning of the end for the 12 tribes. And that's all I have on, this case. Conspiracy. I have actually never heard of it until I, searched it up and it come up, in some conspiracies. But it's absolutely insane and horrific to, think of, all the stuff that went on, especially with the children it's still going, but if it is, that's insane. Especially like in 2024, do you know what I mean? It's just insane to me that stuff like this goes on, but it's just well hidden so no one knows about it because it never gets mentioned. Like, it's actually scary. But anyway,